Welcome to the Marketing Remix, presented by Red Door Interactive. I'm Reed Carr, CEO of Red Door Interactive. Our show is a senior level marketer's resource for navigating our ever-evolving landscape. In each episode, in about 20 minutes, experts from different marketing disciplines representing different buyer touchpoints tackle one important marketing topic. Then, what do you need to know, and how does it affect the buyer? So we're here to talk about preparing for life in a voice-first world. This is the first part of a two-part series. Looking forward to talking a little bit about today what the landscape looks like. So can you imagine a world without websites? How about life without a keyboard? While the arrival of voice technology hasn't reshaped our landscape to this extent yet, it is here to stay. Currently, voice search makes up 35% of all web searches. That number is expected to reach 50% by 2020. Are your users finding your website when they ask for your business by name? Is your website able to deliver the right answers to spoken questions from buyers? In this episode, we'll discuss the current landscape for voice technology, ways to update your website to handle voice interactions, and more. We're here with Ron Hadler, Senior Director of Marketing Technology at Red Door, and Ross Briggs, Manager of SEO, also at Red Door. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hey, great to be here, Reed.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so voice first, that's a topic that a lot of people have been talking about lately. It's everyone's talking to their phones and to devices in their homes. But for the sake of the listeners today to kind of level set on things, what do you guys see as the current landscape for voice technology? I mean, it's not just Siri and the Echo, is it?
I mean, yeah, you can Google Assistant in there also, but the thing is really in the voice first is really that's how people are getting to your content is voice first, and whether you are planning for that or thinking about it, it's happening right now. So it's really kind of when the future is what is voice first, and so you're kind of moving towards that a place where everybody will be doing that as the easiest way to access your content.
Speaking of it being right now, I'm going to head this one off at the pass a little bit. Also listening. So our devices, are they all listening to us right now?
Well, they are listening, but they're waiting for those keywords to kind of go off. You know, your Hey Google or
well, they're on my phone.
Or Okay Alexa. I mean, those things are happening. And but it's not until you actually use those in invocations that they actually record and then send out to the cloud to be translated.
And so obviously the marketers at this point are starting to think about how they want to take advantage of all of that. But again, getting to the level setting a little bit more on what that is. I mean, are we getting to the point of scripting some of this stuff? We talked about chatbots. How do those relate back to voice search? Anything like that?
Absolutely. The voice applications, if you will, that are being, both promoted by Amazon and Alexa and Google for their assistant. Very easy to kind of take content and then turn it into an application that is specifically for those home speakers.
So talking about content then, when people are asking questions and summoning the devices, I mean, what are the tactical implications of some of this voice tech, and how do people take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think there's a number of good tactics you can use currently to get people to your site via voice. And if they're using a smart speaker, or if they're using just voice search, which would be like speech to text within your phone or within the Google application. One of the biggest ways that currently voice is being leveraged or surfaced through those devices is through the usage of featured snippets in search. And so these can be basically answers to questions. It's when you do a search in Google, it pops up at the top and it's that little box of text. And these are also being read out through smart speakers or through any type of screenless device that's providing information. And they are really beneficial in the current landscape, even just through mobile and desktop searches. You can capture more click-through rate through that keyword. But then in sort of the future-proofing model, you're also getting this content surfaced into those smart speakers. And the nice thing about it is, while it doesn't get people onto your website, it's still sort of a simple interaction. It does give you credit for providing that answer. So the Google Home will read out, according to Red Door Interactive, a title tag is a short snippet of text used to identify your website in search, something like that.
So actually talk a little bit about that. What does it mean to give you credit for it?
So I think it's a good branding opportunity because when people are interacting with a screenless device and getting that information read back to them through audio presentation, they don't have that screen to look at. They don't have 10 choices to pick from. They're just getting the single answer. And you need to make that memorable so that when they do come back for deeper investigation or want to actually purchase a product or something like that, they're going to remember who it is. And this is a great reason why you should be serving this content off of your primary domain and making your website name branded and sticky and make people remember that. If you're serving it from some, microsite or external or subdomain, that may not be quite as sticky. So it's a good implication for why, making a strongly branded website and serving content through there can be beneficial.
If I can jump in there, one of the things that you kind of brought up there is branding, right? And really the concept of voice as brand. And so this understanding is that you are serving your brand through the voice, right? And so those things that are being said and how they're being said is an opportunity if you represent your brand as voice.
So it's kind of like the I'm feeling lucky button when you click on it in Google. So whatever that first one is, that's the one that wins. I know that number one in a search result is like if it equates to they're the best at that thing you're looking for. And now in the case of voice, there's no number two, right? I mean, it's number one or nothing.
Yeah, and you take it to Amazon, and you're then directly purchasing a product, and whatever is sort of marked as that Amazon preferred or that top listing, they're obviously getting a lot of that credit, and that's the one people are being served to purchase through the Alexa application.
Yeah, and then the way that people search, I mean, obviously the way we've historically had searched is kind of that caveman-like statement, red car, bit, whatever. And now people are engaging it with that in a completely different way, which is asking questions, using full sentences, things like that. So obviously we've talked about voice search in past episodes, but as a refresher to our listeners, how is voice currently impacting search strategy? Because people are doing it differently now, right?
Totally, yeah. And, I think people tend to come up with the idea that they want to search for and then translate that into caveman speak and then do it through the keyboard and then see the result that they get. And that process of that translation into a typable query isn't happening anymore. So people start to ask the question, they're thinking as they're sort of inputting that search query. And so it becomes a lot more conversational. It has stop words in it. It has the ums and the uhs and things like that you come to expect with a conversational query. And right now, there's no keyword tool that separates here's keyword for voice and here's keywords for keyboard input. But the same data does get recorded and you're able to see that. So through a little bit of sort of detective work, you can start to boil it down to what are likely the voice queries that I'm getting and is bringing, whether it's clicks or just, viewing of my content or hearing of my content. So if you look for longer tail keyword opportunities, so this would be like 4 words or more through a lot of the keyword tools, you can start to see, okay, this is likely a voice query, or here's the type of questions people are asking when they are interacting with my content through voice. And then you can also start to think about just what are the settings where people would be using voice over keyboard. And you start to think about things like driving or cooking and you have your hands dirty and you don't want to touch your phone or your computer. Maybe if you're exercising at the gym, or even if you're done cooking and you're eating the meal. So in what context are people using voice more, and what would they be looking for in relation to my brand during those activities?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So therefore, you're looking at particular activities and then thinking through maybe a content strategy that better represents what that activity may be as it relates to your brand. So thinking maybe activity first or use case first, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So then what is the challenge then as it relates to a marketer, or certainly from a search standpoint, to plan content? Because I think what it had been before is trying to get people down to, if you're selling product, to your product detail page or something like that, but that's maybe not what they're looking for. So what do I need to think about differently at this point?
Yeah, I think trying to get people to a product detail page from a voice interaction would be putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Yeah.
People are looking for that interactive experience. They're looking for information that they can remember and think about for later, for when they are going deeper into the research phase. So I think taking a little bit of that softer sell approach makes a lot more sense when you're planning content for voice, and being helpful, providing people with information, but not asking them to convert on that first visit that's triggered by voice.
Right. And what's the implication then of, because, well, there's different tools and technologies, the way that, Echo/Alexa operates versus maybe Google with the skills. That's where some people are, is like, do I need to build a skill? And what does that look like? Because that is that search, is that, is that your site? Is that something different than that versus a Google where what do you have to do in order to make a particular thing happen? Like if I were to use voice, for example, with Titleist, is like, I'm like on the course. I'm like, my feet are above my, the ball right now. What's my shot here? Like, how do I have that engagement to make Titleist be the one that gives me that content?
I think that's very situational, just the same as most of the other devices that have come online after desktop, right? Whether that's mobile,
but that's what you're
that's
thinking,
a watch,
right?
or now voice, right? So it's situational, and you're giving it a perfect example of where I might invoke that sort of application. A lot of the things that they're even promoting is, my hands are busy, I need to ask a question.
Right.
I don't want to get, mayonnaise on my device, and so I want to ask a question about that. So it's really situational, and those are the ways that you need to kind of approach that as you're planning to build those applications. But absolutely, there's a bit of a domain sort of grab for keywords and invocations when it comes to those apps. And right now, those are the things that people should be kind of paying attention to from a brand perspective. Is that does somebody really want to be giving all the content that is really on my keywords?
Yeah. And that's the difference between SEO version of this and then app-based version of this.
Yeah, and I think even skills is probably the future iteration or the evolution of what is a simple application of voice search right now. And you can kind of think of it with like smartphones, right? Like, so when smartphones first came about, it was really like, okay, there's an internet browser and there's a calculator and there's a couple things that you can use here that were very similar to a desktop computer, just visualized in that smaller thing. The idea of an Uber app where you can summon a ride was never something people were thinking about with the first iteration of the smartphone. And that's very much where we're at with voice search right now. So we're thinking about replicating our desktop and mobile searches via voice, but really it's that interaction, that ability to perform actions and get search results and interact with different databases that skills are starting to get closer to. And I think that's really the evolution of it, to where you don't realize you're performing a web query, but the Google device is connecting to the web and pulling information in, and you sort of becoming your personal assistant with the customized things that it knows about you.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk in the next episode more about the future state of this. So, hopefully listeners that are listening to this will bring over that, because I'm going to wrap this up on this particular episode with one more question about the current state of things related to, all the stuff that we're talking about right now. What does this all mean for the current state of websites and their content? So, developing structured or speakable markup data, things like that. I mean, what do we need to do about the site that I have right now based on where we are?
Yeah, markup and snippets is kind of, I'd say that's kind of bedrock or foundational that what you should be implementing, because that really gives the clues to the bots that are finding those answers, how to present them. That structure of even starting to break up your content and not having a very just a wall of text, so to speak,
right,
and putting it into more of a question and answer, right? Because that's really what is starting to surface as far as those feature snippets, is that format: question answer, question answer. I'm not saying you need to have a website that's a 50,000 page long question and answer FAQ,
right,
but you should be starting to think about answering questions within your content.
Well, I would think that a lot of brands kind of already have that, right? They have their sort of FAQs, at least in some form or fashion, somewhere in their company, whether or not it's exposed on the site. And maybe that's kind of where that richness may come from in SEO. You think that's true, Ross?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And even if you have that content, and as Ron was alluding to, it's sort of just, it's a wall of text, and the bots are left to process that and say, hey, I found this keyword in here, maybe this is the answer. But if you actually go back and label that and say, this line is the question, this line is the answer, this element is the price of the product, this element is the description of the product, then the bots can really pull that information out and use it a lot more reliably in order to provide the answer to the specific question people were looking for.
Yeah.
The deeper part of that is really kind of when you get down to creating your content into kind of a content engineering, which is more structured content. A lot of that is just kind of removing all of your layout and your styling out of your content and making it pure content.
Yeah. which doesn't mean it's going to be ugly or any of that kind of stuff. It's we're still going to have websites. They're still, well, and we'll talk about actually what that all is going to look like in the next episode too, because leave a little cliffhanger there. But it doesn't mean things have to be ugly or anything like that. I think it just requires to understand that this is a new world. People are engaging with things via voice, and we're seeing it every day now, more and more. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about where it's headed from here. So guys, for this episode, thanks for joining us, Ross and Ron. Appreciate it, and look forward to the next episode on this.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Reed.